We're going to take you now live to
On
that
record.
press conference and see what they're saying.
The majority of our snowpack really only came from a couple storms in December, and the small amounts of snowfall that have happened since then haven't been enough to outpace the amount of snowmelt. That the April 1st date, so April 1st as in today, is always that important mark in snowpack monitoring, because that is typically when our snowpack is at its peak in terms of snow water content. Unfortunately, the northern Sierra Nevada experienced its peak snowpack in mid-January. After April 1st, we start to shift our focus from snowpack building to snowpack melting. And we have less snow right now than we did last year at this time. However, our watersheds look to be in better condition this year for that snow to actually melt and run off and hopefully not soak up into those dry soils as much as they did last year. My team's actively taking in all of this rainfall data, snowfall data, and incorporating it into the different models that we have and are forecasting water supply so that we'll know roughly how much water we'll have to fill up our reservoirs during the spring and summer. We've partnered with the airborne snow observatories to get a better picture of the snowpack, a full picture of the snowpack. And our team is fully leveraging that data to improve our water supply forecasting accuracy. Unfortunately, though, our latest snowmelt forecasts are only about 44% of average. Lake Oroville is only about 47% full, and Lake Shasta, which is our largest surface water reservoir in the state, is only 38% full. Roughly statewide, our statewide reservoir storage as of this morning is right around 70% of average, or only about 48% of its total capacity, which is actually right where we were on April 1st of 2015.
All right, that is Sean de Guzman, who is now the guy who took over for Frank Gerke, who's puts the, literally, I'll say it in layman's terms, puts the stick in the ground to figure out the snowpack. Rob, 44% of average. I know I can hear you calculating even as we speak. What do you think of all that?
Well, he just threw out a very important date. He just said 2015.
Yeah.
Walt, that is the time period
Mm-hmm.
of the mega drought that we went through.
Mm-hmm.
By some accounts, that was the worst drought in California in more than 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, snowpack is part of this. He did mention some positive news, which I think is really important. When he mentions the watersheds looking like they're in better shape,
Mm-hmm.
what that means is that the soils are a lot more moist, meaning that whatever melts has an easier path to get to rivers, creeks, streams, ultimately down into those reservoirs where it can be captured and stored and then used how they choose to use it for power generation, for water supply, and all these other things. What happened last year is that it was so dry, they had a snowpack and they had a forecast, and it was a total mismatch, because what happened was we got hit with super warm temperatures. If you remember the big Pacific Northwest heat wave, where we hit 116 degrees in Portland, Oregon, of all places, we were on the southern end of that, and places like Redding and the Shasta watershed got hammered. And a lot of the snowpack never made it into Lake Shasta.
Right.
So there's a bunch of things that are going to happen between where we are now and the ultimate numbers that they have to work with. So there's some positive news, but you can see it with your own eyes, Walt.
Yeah.
This is a pretty rough day.
It's a tough one, 44%, but that's, and you mentioned 2015 earlier in this broadcast, the last time we were up there and saw dry pat. So, yeah, okay. So, all right, for us, anything better, any better news for us for tonight and the weekend?
Yeah, you know, what I am seeing, Walt, is we just got to move on here. What we have is what we have. The first thing I do want to show you is, remember, it's not that one location or it's not one section of the Sierra, it's the whole mountain range, and there's some better news there. So let's go ahead and start off with that. This is our Sierra snowpack as far as we can see statewide. Northern Sierra, really a big, huge lack of snow. For their location, they said 44%. That's in line with what we thought, right around 43%. Southern Sierra is about the same. So as a state, we're well below average. And we'll just have to see how it ends up. I remember a May a couple years ago where we got 3 inches of rain in May, so who knows? There's still some time left, but statistically speaking, we just can't rely on something extreme like that.